Right, I should be live now, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Yep, looks like it. Right. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so I'm going to be going over this tool called Postman. Um, it's similar to curl and burp, but it's more aimed towards developers, which is why I found it in the first place. Because I used to write, well, I still do write a lot of code and APIs and stuff. And because it's aimed at developers, it's very easy to use and very easy to get to do what you want it to do. It's just as powerful, from what I've seen, as curl and burp. Um, it's free, like both of those, which is excellent. And yeah, I'm just gonna go over some basic usage of it, and then a couple of examples. But yeah, so this is the UI when you load it up. It runs, I think they have a desktop app now, but you can also run it as a Chrome app, so it like attaches onto Chrome if you don't want to install it. Um, yeah, so up here you've got straightforward URL bar. Uh, you can just make your requests, and it'll give you the response from that web page. In this instance, I just shoved github.com in there, and this is what the source code of GitHub looks like. It has nice little preview tabs, so it'll try and preview, or yeah, it's quite big, but there you go. It'll preview the web page for you. I don't use this too often because usually you end up querying tiny pages for CTFs or API backend or all sorts of things like that. So you don't usually use the preview tab, but it's there if you want it. Back up here at the top near the URL bar, you can change the query type, which half of these didn't even know existed. But you've got your standard like get and post requests, and then put, patch, delete, copy, head. Head that you use sometimes. Options is quite useful. The rest of these I've never actually heard of, but um, you can also, if you're messing with really strange APIs and stuff, or Ctf challenges, you can even type in custom things. So I don't know. Let's do hello request, and if I send this through, uh, apparently GitHub doesn't really care. Um, but if I open, so there's a thing down here called console, which looks a lot like the browser console for Chrome, and you can see my hello request went through. But on the right hand side, it hit a 301, which is a permanent redirect, I believe, um, which effectively tells the browser that, hey, this URL's just moved over here permanently. In this case, it's just redirecting to a normal GET request. Um, so back. So yeah, yeah. So up here, hide that. You have a couple of tabs for manipulating the request. You've got parameters. So these are query parameters. So what you'd usually see, what do you usually see up here in the URL after a question mark and separated by ampersands? They just like build down here automatically, or you can, add more in. I know. Like that. So if you've got like a big list, you can bulk edit these, paste a bunch in, and it'll automatically generate the URL. It's quite easy if you just want to change it and you've got a massive list of them. And then next you've got the authorization tab. This allows you to do all sorts of authorization over HTTP. Your browser can usually do this, but if in the case you're interacting with an API or the website wants authorization but your browser doesn't prompt it, if you're like for Ctf challenges, you can manually send all that over here. So quite commonly used is basic auth. That's when you get a lovely little pop-up. That's a bad example. I don't think I have an example. But you get the little pop-up at the top of the screen that'll go, what's your username and password. Um, and you can put that sort of thing in here. So these are actually built when these are sent to the server, you'll find, just open a new window. Go. Yeah, so when these are sent to the server, they're sent under an authorization header, but as the string of your username, in this case admin, I'll just change the password, and then colon the password, and then that's base 64 encoded. So you can pull up something like Cyber Chef, put in this string to base 64, and this is the string it'll send to the server as part of the header it generates. If I send that now, go down into console and just expand this. You will see, yeah, there you go, authorization, type of basic with that base 64 encoded string there. Like Matt covered the other week, if you use something like Wireshark to intercept HTTP traffic and you see one of these authorization basic headers, it's very easy to reverse them. You just copy the hash or the base 64 string, put it into something like CyberChef again, do from base 64, and there you go. There's your username and password that was sent over. But yeah, this is the username and password that was sent over to the web page. As Akib mentioned in chat, HTTP Connect is missing from this list. I would have never noticed. That's usually good to identify hosts in a HTTP tunnel. That's good to know. Yeah, I didn't know that. So there you go. You learn something new every day. I'll close that down. Right. So next tab is headers. You can see. So these are all the headers. I think by default it just shows you the ones you've put in. But I just like showing all the ones it generates so you can see what it's doing in the background. And you can see the authorization header I talked about from the other generated from the other tab is in here. Then you've got cache control, Postman tokens, things like that. You can just turn a lot of these off if you don't want them. But yeah, and this also allows you to manipulate stuff like a user agent quite easily. So I don't know. Okay, so you can't actually edit the existing ones back. What's my mouse doing? I think I broke the program. Cool. Takes a second to load up sometimes, but get back in. That's the first time I've had a issue like that with it. Back to where we were, yeah. So you can override all these headers. So if I want to change the user agent, you can see it auto starts to suggest it. And then, I don't know, you can change your user agent to Google. So you're then requesting console. You're then sending that header over. Not like I can spot it. There we go, user agent right at the top. You can send that over to the server. And you can do that with all sorts of headers. I'll go through a couple of quite useful headers later. But for now, I will just clear that one. Next, you've got the body tab. You can send all sorts of different formats here. As a post request body, usually is what this is used for. But you can actually send that body text alongside a lot of different request types. Put requests, I believe, use this a lot. But yeah, so you can normal form data types from a form. Normal form data is just, like what you'd usually find on a login page, just the normal username, password boxes. They'd usually be sent using this form data type. URL encoded is usually used if, like you had a form that needs to submit a file alongside some text, you'd usually have that URL encoded. You can, with Postman, you can do raw, which just allows you to put text in. It's got a couple of formatting options. You don't need to choose which formatting option. It's just better for the server a lot of the time, and it gives you a nice little beautify button up here. So if I just quickly, I don't know, type a string, you'll be able to click. If I type a valid JSON string in, should be happy. Okay, it doesn't want to play nice. It's complaining at me. Um, oh, why? There we go. Yeah, you can click beautify and it'll make it look all nice. So if you've got a big block of JSON, you'll be able to put that in and beautify it. Um, and then I've never actually really looked at these last couple of tabs. You can like write tests and stuff. I think they're more aimed at developers. But yeah, so that's yeah, there's binary output. So you can just, if you're just uploading a file, you can just do that using that window. Um, So one thing I find quite useful with this as well is I can write like a, if I need to send 100 identical requests to a web server, I can craft them using Postman, and then I can click this button over here on the right hand side called code. And then you can just pick, a language and a library that you want to use. So in this instance, Node.js, I want to use, the Axios module. There you go. It turns all the options you chose. I'll just change this back to none. There you go. Yeah, every option you picked in the Postman UI then gets generated into this nice block of code. Um, Useful if you, like I said, you need to send a lot of like similar requests, or you want to send, 100 requests with one variable that increments. Choose something like Python using the request module. If I wanted to, you copy this into a Python file, and then say we wanted to, increment on yellow, you just backspace that out. Have your number string. You get the point. And you just increment that and stick this whole lot in a loop, and then you'd be sending however many requests with that slight change, which is useful. You can build your own like password brute forcing systems and stuff using this if you want, that can run against a word list or whatever. So, look my notes. Yeah, so a couple of headers. That yeah, as you can see, there's one here called host. I think I thought you'll love it when you go to use a bit of software and it just breaks on you. Gonna restart it again. Yeah, so I'm gonna go over two headers that are used. One of them's used more than others. Well, it's used in virtually every request, which is the host header. So that's used to actually tell the server you're talking to what domain you actually want to talk to. So if I go host, I'll just use my domain for instance. See, if I send a request to github.com, but with the host of my domain, chances are it will complain at me. Oh no, okay, that's done interesting things. It didn't complain at me, so instead it just requested the host. But usually in this case, so it'd resolve this IP. It's not gonna, I can't get it to work. But usually it'd send the request to this server address, but with this host name. So this will save you editing things like your hosts file if you want to a manually define a domain mapping to an IP address. So you could then map google.com to an IP address on your local network if you want to do some testing or whatever. But this, you can do it all within UI. I just can't get it to work for whatever reason. It's probably because this server's actually local for me and it's probably just doing weird things. Um, the next header I'm going to go over is called X forwarded for. So you don't see this a lot on the public internet. This is usually used for things called reverse proxies, which is where you send your web request. Big companies and stuff will use this a lot to a reverse proxy, which can run Apache, Nginx, all sorts of things. Nginx, sorry. Your request goes from your machine to their reverse proxy, and then behind their reverse proxy, which will be sat on github.com, for instance, behind that there'll be 100 or so web servers, and it'll just send it to one of them. They'll all be the usual idea is they're all identical, but then the reverse proxy can protect the backend servers from being exposed to the internet. They can then scale it however they want, and they don't have to worry about, weird DNS issues, not mapping to the right locations, or things like that. They can just add more into this big pool. So it's used a lot for redundancy, or if you've got, one public IP, you can have a reverse proxy sat behind that on usual web ports, point 10 domains at it, and then it can forward those requests to your internal network with more than one web server dotted about, that each one worries about, a separate domain. Um, and it adds this X forwarded for header, which I'll paste there. When it gets the request, it puts the X forwarded for header in, so the server, the actual web server in the end that has all the content on it, knows the original IP address that this data came from. Because when the reverse proxy sends a request to the backend servers, it'll then start coming. The IP address it came from will be the one of the reverse proxy, not of the original client, which obviously will cause issues if you're trying to, ban people by IPs or track IP addresses or anything to do with IPs, because they'll be wrong. So if I do 1.1.1.1, send that request. Yeah, send that request. I've actually and that'll add the header in. So I'm gonna show a quick example of this. So there's a website here called RequestBin. Find it very useful for testing things, or if you want to get just a dump of a HTTP request or HTTPS request. You can go in, just click create. You log in with GitHub or Google. You can create public ones where you don't need to be logged in, I believe. But I mean, it's easy enough to log in. And you'll see on the left, you'll get an event source with whatever, and you'll get a nice little URL. So this is brilliant. I prefer this service over others because sometimes when you're trying to get into, test something, you won't be. You'll have with a lot of others, you'll get a domain. You'll get a domain, and then it'll be slash, I don't know, what, slash something. Whereas with Pipedream, RequestBin, you actually get a subdomain on their domain, which is brilliantly useful because if you're not allowed to put the slash in, this gets around that issue. So if I send a request over to the Pipedream request bin I have with this X forwarded for header, click send. You'll see it just gives like some dummy response. You'll see now it's popped up saying, here's all the headers. You see, it's actually that's interesting. It's actually tacked on the X forwarded for. It's tacked on my IP along with this 1.1.1.1, which is Cloudflare's DNS. But obviously, the data didn't actually come from there. And it's got all the other headers that whatever this backend server that they use, because they'll use reverse proxy to track a lot of this. Just tacked on a couple of other headers, but these are all the headers that the server ended up receiving, which are all the ones that are defined in here, along with any others that are just added along the way. So that's request bin, which yeah. So if you want to exfiltrate data, you can just get a service to send a request up to a request bin, and then you can go on at a later date, see the request bin, and there you go. There's the request that was sent out. You can also, with this, which I have prepared a slide demo for, as you can see, it remembers the IPs you use. Yeah, we got it right. So yeah, another thing you can do is you can do path traversal. So if a remote server is vulnerable to path traversal, which is where you can, in this case, excuse me. In this case, I have a local web server that you can request a file from. runs in this folder, and it's just pulling the file from this directory. And if a service is vulnerable to path traversal, it means you can do stuff like // and then name a file. I know this one doesn't exist, which in this case it's almost like just using a PowerShell or CMD or Linux terminal or whatever. Wait for this to quickly start up. Yeah. So you're effectively it's going all right. So we need to go // so it's like cd // and then find the test file. But I know there's not a test file in here. There's only these folders. But it allows you in vulnerable applications to get access to files you're not meant to access. So a common one on Windows is system.ini, I believe, which I won't show an example here, but you could just, do // do it a couple of times or whatever, and try and work your way back up to root. Because if I do that in this case, if I do like too many, it doesn't matter. It takes me to the root of the drive anyway. And so you can effectively get a predictable location out. And then in this instance, you just put like Windows/system.ini, which is a common one for Windows. There's etc password for Linux. There's plenty of like common file paths online that you can pull up, but they're the main two for Windows and Linux. In this case, I can show an example of this because file it's built. Yeah, you can request this // package.json. So we know it looks in the data directory, and we can go back up a directory. You can see there's a package.json in there, and if we send this request over, we get the content of that package.json. If I can verify, there you go. Which is that's the exact contents we got from the server, which is quite a big issue in a lot of cases because you usually find this sort of issue on embedded web servers on like CCTV cameras, or I can't think of any like IoT devices. You'll see bits like this, and if they're not protected against path traversal, you might be able to pull config files which have Wi-Fi passwords in, and people reuse passwords. Don't do that. But yeah, people reuse passwords, and you could then report that or whatever, because you're getting access to someone's account, which you shouldn't. So yeah, so I've talked a little bit about the console. It's just like almost like the Chrome Network tab. Shows you all your past requests for this current session on Postman. One thing I didn't cover is, as you can see, I've got collections on the left, which are like folders with all sorts of bits and bobs in. So you can save these requests. So if you know you're going to use a request a lot during a Ctf event or something, you can save that into a folder, and then you can actually share that folder with like whoever you're working on the Ctf with. Yeah, you can share that folder with whoever you work on the Ctf with, and then they can also access the requests. Sorry. Yeah, they can also access the requests, which is brilliantly useful if you need to share data, and it saves you, telling whoever you're working with, oh, this is the exact request I did. You can just save it something, give it a reasonable name, put it in a folder, and then there you go. They can access it like straight away. And because you can save things, you can also have multiple tabs. So if you want to opt between requests you built without saving them, you can just do that and tab them, and you can obviously close all these off. Just looking at my talking points. Oh yeah.
The folders are really useful for people like me who struggle with spelling, so therefore I don't have to worry about or whether I've put a full stop instead of a semicolon or something.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, because they just save the requests out, and you can just open them up on another machine or whatever. It's also got, if you log in, you need to be logged in to do all that sort of cross-user syncing. It'll also sync to devices and stuff. So if I installed Postman on my laptop and logged in, it'd sync all my saved collections and stuff. It also has a history tab. I won't open that because I don't know what's in there. Which I use Postman for a lot of things. So yeah, I don't want to disclose some info I'm not meant to. Um, so yeah, I think that's almost everything about Postman that I've got. Uh, does anyone have any questions, or take that as a no? Doesn't look like there's anything in Discord or
Say chat.
yeah, chat. There is a couple of the Ctf challenges. There's one that went up last week. I forgot to do one this week. I might knock one out and get one up by the end of the week. But yeah, there's ones that you can use HTTP manipulation to get the flag for that. That one's up. And then I believe the Christmas challenge from last year, yeah, last year's Christmas challenge, um, uses a bit of HTTP manipulation. What net provider am I with? I'm with PlusNet. I don't know why it's relevant, but sure, I'll tell you. I don't really mind. Um, yeah. Um, yeah,
I
you
think we'll
put.
be heading over to the Discord now, right?
Yeah. We'll jump over in Discord. If you've got any more questions or whatever, we'll be in Discord for a bit, and yeah, feel
Talking
free
about
to.
the latest cybersecurity news as well.
Aye.
So if you there's some interesting stuff happened this week.
But yeah, I'll just put that back up. There we go. All right. I guess thanks for watching, and we'll see you over in Discord.